Welcome to the Nourish You Podcast, where we question the traditional model of dieting and nutrition and focus on choice, fun, and health for the whole mind, body, and spirit. I'm Jana Maurer, a non-traditional registered dietitian and well-being expert, and I want to challenge you to take 2% of your day today, listen to this episode, and make this your health win for the day. Pop in your earbuds, strap on your walking shoes, or pour a big glass of wine, whatever you need for today, and tune out the world as much as you can for the next 30 minutes, and let's fill up your cup. Hey everyone, welcome back to the Nourish You Podcast. I am Jana, your host, and today is another solo episode as we continue on part 2 of the theme for October of the emotions of weight loss. So I absolutely loved the feedback that I received for part 1. So if you haven't tuned into that, I highly encourage you to do so. There were a lot of individuals that just shared how it made so much sense for them after listening to that podcast. So I definitely encourage you to go back and listen to part 1 as I continue with part 2 for the emotions of weight loss. So I will say I'm actually going to take a step back for today's podcast because I got asked a question that I thought was just such a great question, and I really wanted to be able to answer it and dive into it as it relates to this topic of emotions and weight loss and emotional eating. So one of my coaching clients said, Jana, what does that even mean? What does it even mean to be an emotional eater? And I thought this was such a great question because if we don't know what something is, our brains will not move towards it. It's really a protective mechanism. And so we're not really going to dive into it if it's like, that doesn't even make sense to me. So I really want to define what it would mean if you are an emotional eater. So essentially, I'm going to link this in the show notes. This is a resource provided by helpguide.org. where they really go through the differences between an emotional eater and helping you identify if you are an emotional eater and how it differs from physical hunger or physical, like when you are eating for a physical need. So they define emotional eating as really using food to make yourself feel better. So essentially you fill emotional needs rather than your stomach. And where this can really throw us off is if we are using food to address an emotional need, we will never actually feel full. And so they go through, and I wanted to ask some of these questions so that you have this information. Again, I'm going to link the website information in the show notes below, but I wanted to talk through this of really being able to identify if you are an emotional eater, because that gives us a lot of information of what the next best step is going to be. So for example, if you're an emotional eater, but all you're doing is looking for meal plans, you're not going to get the results that you're looking for because we're not actually addressing the true reason why you are turning to food in times to comfort or soothe or distract or essentially give yourself what you potentially may be missing in the moment. For example, if you are bored or anxious and you go to food and we don't actually give you something to distract your brain, or we don't give you something to help calm that anxiety or manage that stress, you are likely always going to go to food because we didn't expand your wellness toolbox. We didn't actually address the core needs that you are looking for. And so again, it can be really helpful to be able to identify, I am an emotional eater, which I would say most individuals are. It is very built into our culture that we go to food to celebrate. We go to food. It doesn't always have to be bad. Like emotional eating, it doesn't have to be a bad thing. Like going to food when you're sad, yes, that can happen. And also going to food when you're happy can happen. So think about celebrations or graduations or birthday parties, or if you got a good report card, what do we usually do? We usually go to food and say, oh my gosh, you got a good report card. Let's go get ice cream today, right? Like, so we have really been conditioned in many different ways to go to food outside of its true physical need. So here are some questions that I want you to think on for yourself. So again, maybe you're out going for a walk, or maybe you're tuning in as you're doing laundry, or whatever you are doing. But if you have the opportunity, I always encourage you to get a pen and paper so that you can jot these things down and really be able to journal on them for yourself. So here are the questions that they ask of really being able to identify if you are an emotional eater. So the first question is, do you eat more when you're feeling stressed? Now, I like to expand this question because an emotional eater can also be someone that doesn't eat when they feel stressed. So it really depends on how you respond to that stress aspect. But typically speaking, if you are either going to food or restricting food during stressful situations, that means that emotions are really what's driving you to either go away from or go to food. Number 2, do you eat when you're not hungry or when you're full? So this is a really a great example that I like to give with this is when maybe you're bored or you just want something to do. So I hear this a lot for individuals that have a desk job and maybe they get a little bit more tired in the afternoon and they're not really hungry, but really being able to use their hands or be able to do something with their mouth keeps them awake. And so it's a distraction, but they're not really hungry. And or another example of when you're already full and you go past your full mechanism on the hunger scale. So I always like to tell my coaching clients, we want to eat until we're full, but we really want to stop before we get stuffed. So there's a big difference between feeling full and being stuffed in an eating experience. And so if you are eating past your full response, oftentimes that is an indication that there is an emotional need that we need to give ourselves that is outside of food. Number 3, do you eat to feel better? To calm and soothe yourself when you're maybe sad, mad, bored, anxious. And I like to add the positive ones to this too. When you're happy, when you want to form connection with other people, when you want to celebrate, does food essentially make you feel better? And if the answer is yes, then again, this just might be one more way that we are identifying that you are an emotional eater. And it gives us a lot more information to work with as far as creating the plan that's going to set you up for wellness success. And number 4, do you reward yourself with food? I don't think I've ever met a single human being that hasn't ever at one point in time rewarded themselves with food, right? This is really, again, built into our culture. And it's actually one of the ways that oftentimes we express love. I know in my own experience, I love to go have ice cream with people. It is one of the favorite things. It's one of my favorite things to do with my niece and nephew. We go, we get some ice cream, we just enjoy a good time. It's always a mess, but it's so much fun. And it's one way that we have a reward aspect to it. So is that something that you feel you do? If you do a good job or if you did X, Y, Z, then you get this food. I see this oftentimes in the restrict binge cycle where you restrict yourself all week and then you reward yourself for being good Monday through Friday with those foods. So this can also show up in our overall eating patterns of I've been good, I deserve this, I've done all the things throughout the week, I deserve this, I'm going to reward myself with whatever, fill in the blank with whatever food. And it's usually the more, and I'm air quoting, unhealthier foods that we are rewarding ourselves with. Next question. Do you regularly eat until you've stuffed yourself? So this can be really, so I'm going to loop this in with another question they asked. Do you feel powerless or out of control around food? So if on a routine basis, you are constantly finding yourself really stuffed, really gross, really bloated after meal times, this is a really big indication that you are trying to feel an emotional need with food. And again, this is not bad. We're really looking at, we're trying to find a solution, and we're trying to understand what's really going on. And unless we identify these habits, we're not able to actually create a solution for what is truly happening. And then the last one, does food make you feel safe? Do you feel like food is a friend? So I've heard it described this way of, I know, and usually a lot of my coaching clients will share with me that they have one particular food item that they always go to and that they know is going to do the job. And what that means is it's not going to let you down. It's going to taste the same all the time. And it's going to give you a momentary break where you can just let it all loose. Right? It's going to give you this momentary, like, I can breathe. And for me, when I was really into my restrict binge cycle and when I was really into emotional eating, it was ice cream for me. Here's a little caveat to that though. That food was actually causing my stomach to hurt even more because I found out, this was before I found out I was lactose intolerant. Go figure. And so sometimes the foods that we are stepping into can actually make us feel worse and guilty and shameful in the long run. And then we start this emotional cycle. Now, this emotional cycle, they call it the emotional eating cycle, where something happens that upsets you and you feel an overwhelming urge to eat. Then you eat more than you know you should, and you feel guilty or powerless over food. The cycle starts again. So something happens that upsets you, you feel overwhelmed or that overwhelming urge to eat, you eat more than you should, and then you feel guilty and powerless over the food. If this is something that really resonates with you, this is what we call the emotional eating cycle. And this is the cycle that we really want to understand. We want to understand how it shows up for you. We want to understand what potentially are those areas that are upsetting to you, that really feel overwhelming to you. And we want to create plans, and we want to put tools and resources in your wellness toolbox that you can go to outside of food. So I will share with my coaching clients, and I'll share this with you, that sometimes the answer is food. Not all the times is the answer is food. So sometimes, yes, we want to have dark chocolate ice cream. Again, if you can't tell, I love ice cream. But not all the time. Not all the time is that the answer. Some of the times, maybe it's connection with friends because you haven't talked with your girlfriend in a long time. Maybe it's going and getting more sleep because you are sleep deprived. Maybe it's taking a long shower and getting away from all the noise and the chaos. Maybe it's turning off the news and not hearing all, XYZ of what's going on in the world. Those are examples of how we can take care of your emotional health. I will also add your spiritual health to that, that are going to be able to satisfy that craving, the emotional craving that you are experiencing, versus going to the craving of food. So I always like to make that distinction. Is the craving that you're having an emotional craving? Or are you truly having a craving for a certain food item? Because if you are having the craving for one specific food, that is an indication that you are in an emotional eating cycle. Now, if you have cravings for many different foods and many different foods could satisfy the need, that's an example of a physical hunger aspect. Hey everyone, it's Jana, and I wanted to interrupt your content real quick to tell you about something that I've been using every single day, OWYN protein drink. I've been using it for the last year now and absolutely love this product. It's been something that's been so helpful to meet my protein needs, to meet my calorie needs, and to meet my overall nutrition and performance goals. I am super picky when it comes to recommending different products or supplements because I take a whole foods-based approach. So I highly encourage you to check this out for yourself, see if you like it. I do have a discount code for you. You can click the link in the show notes below. At checkout, you can put Jana M20 to get 20% off and check it out for yourself. Now back to the episode. So this article really does, I think it's one of the best articles I've come across in the area of emotional eating. And it also goes through showing the difference between emotional hunger versus physical hunger. So I want to read some of those off to you as well. So you have those questions. You can certainly, write those down, ask yourself those questions, see what comes about for you, see what higher level of understanding maybe comes from saying, oh yeah, I am an emotional eater. Again, this is not a bad thing. We're just really getting more information about what's working for you and what's not working for you. And then we can really start to understand, how do we delineate between, if I'm feeling hungry, is it emotional hunger or is it physical hunger? Because if it's emotional hunger, we're going to do different behaviors and actions versus if it's physical hunger. So first and foremost, with emotional hunger comes on suddenly. It's like something happens, super stressful, and instantly you want chocolate, or instantly you want a donut, or again, fill in the blank, whatever you usually go to. So the emotional hunger comes on suddenly. Versus physical hunger comes on gradually. You are able to satisfy your physical hunger needs. Maybe it's been a couple of hours since you've eaten, and you can gradually feel that hunger that's coming about for another time that you need to fuel your body, nourish your body. So the difference between the emotional hunger comes on suddenly, physical hunger very gradually. Then emotional hunger feels like it needs to be satisfied instantly. So here's a thing that we're seeing with the emotional aspect. It's sudden, it's instant. And that's where we typically feel completely out of control, because the urge, if you will, feels very strong, very right now. Versus the physical hunger can wait. It's like, okay, I'm sending you signals. The body's sending you signals. Your hunger hormones are going off, but it's like, I'm just letting you know I'm here and I can be satisfied in a little bit. And so it's willing to wait. Emotional hunger craves specific comfort foods. You have that one food that you always go to. Again, it's going to do the job. Sign of emotional hunger. Versus physical hunger is open to many different options, and lots of things sound good. So you could go for this or that or this. There's no really one specific food that you need likely right now with physical hunger. Emotional hunger isn't satisfied with a full stomach. So I'm going to give this example, and I would love to know if this has ever happened to you, but this totally happened to me, and it still happens to me on occasion. So really, when you have recreated a healthy relationship with food, these things still will happen. You're not perfect. It's not going to be perfect all the time, but there's progression with it. And more often than not, you don't engage in the where you are stuffing yourself or you feel out of control with food. So it's actually normal to feel stuffed after some meals, not after all meals. And it's more infrequent than frequent. But when I didn't know that I was an emotional eater and I was in this emotional eating spiral, I would stuff myself and feel so gross after almost every meal. And then the shame and guilt spiral just kicked in. And then it would be, I'm never eating this again. I'm going on a diet, right? The restrict binge cycle would kick in. I mean, all the things would happen. And I would always feel so gross after each meal because I was never truly satisfied or full from the food because I wasn't actually filling the true need that I had. So if you find that the majority of your meals you eat past that full hunger signal, that would be an indication it is emotional. versus physical hunger stops when you're full. You're able to really control that. You're able to sit with yourself. You're able to identify, oh, I'm full now and I'm done, and be able to move away. And then last, emotional eating triggers feelings of guilt, powerlessness, and shame. This is oftentimes where I hear individuals say, I feel out of control around food. I don't know what to do with food. Food is so stressful. Those would be examples. Versus physical hunger, eating to satisfy physical hunger doesn't make you feel bad about yourself. So when you are truly nourishing and fueling your body, you know you are doing so in a way that is required to sustain life. And there is no need to feel bad or guilty about that. Now, I will say that there's some caveats in that. If you have had a long history of dieting practices, or if you have had a long history of not being able to identify between emotional versus physical hunger, some of the mental tapes or the mental gremlins that we share with ourselves can really throw us off when we are trying to distinguish the difference between emotional versus physical hunger. So we do have to work with that. And that's something that I support my coaching clients in working through, is how to identify the emotional hunger aspect and the physical hunger aspect when we have been conditioned that restricting and depriving your body is the way to health success. And so those are two different paths that we usually take and two different modalities that are usually supported. So I do always like to call that to light, that it isn't as simple as not feeling bad after a meal, particularly if you have a long history, maybe an eating disorder, or you have had a long history of dieting practices that really have, frankly, made you not confident in the eating experience. So again, that is something that I support my coaching clients with. But I wanted to leave you with something that can be helpful. So say you've listened to this podcast and say you clicked on the link to explore this a little bit more and you have identified, yes, 100%, I'm an emotional eater. What do I do now? So this is my 4-step process that I share with my coaching clients, and that I think can be useful for you to be able to explore for yourself. So first and foremost, we want to get curious. The first step in anything is curiosity, because we have to be able to identify where you actually are. We have to be able to identify what's working, what's not working. What do you actually need? What type of eater are you? Where do you feel your triggers or your emotional responses are coming from, right? Like, these are all the questions. And so I know my coaching clients get tired of me asking questions, but really we are getting curious so that you actually get to know yourself better. So a lot of the times, if we are asked a question and the answer is, I don't know, that is our opportunity to explore and actually be able to answer that question. Because if we're walking around with all these I don't knows, no wonder the eating experience is so confusing and you feel out of control. It's because you don't know. So we have to create solutions and we have to create actual potential answers to these questions so that we can identify the root cause and then be able to move forward from there. It also helps us with being able to lay a true foundation. So often we want to go from 0 to 2,000 overnight, and you're not prepared for that. You have no solid ground to land on or even build from. And so this is where the curiosity really helps with being able to lay that strong foundation. It allows you to understand and create a plan that's aligned with the 3 areas of your personality. So what's your personality? Are you type A? Are you type B? What does that even look like for you? What's your culture? What cultural influences impact how you eat, why you eat, where you eat? What does that look like? And then what lifestyle do you actually want to create? Are you looking for quick fixes and a quick weight loss to be able to gain it back plus more? Or are you looking for a lifestyle that is for longevity and to be able to support being strong and healthy and around for your kids and your grandkids and not have to deal with diseases and medications and immobility. I mean, what is your goal? I don't know that. You have to tell me that. And so this is part of the coaching process is we get clear with what that looks like for you. I can't create that. I don't know. You are the one. We tune into your intuition to really draw out what that looks like for you. So again, I'm sharing my care model. And so the first step is the curiosity. The second step is acceptance. Once we have an understanding of where you are, we have to accept where you actually are. So I'll give this example as it relates to physical activity or movement. So if you keep trying to think that you are a marathon runner, but you haven't gone to the gym in 2 years, we're not actually accepting where you truly are. And we can't actually create goals that you are going to be able to engage with. This is where the dismissal of so many things usually happens. We dismiss where we actually are, and then it prevents us from being able to set effective goals. So for example, say you haven't worked out in 2 years. That's fine. Let's accept that. And let's set a goal to get you to that next step that gets you in progression, not the step that puts you 2,000 steps ahead of even where you actually are and then makes you feel like a failure. Here's how this shows up. If you haven't worked out in 2 years, you're not going to go and run 10 miles. Maybe you are, but it might hurt the next day, right? But can you go for a 10-minute walk? The answer could be yes on that one. And you're going to prove to yourself that you actually did it, which builds your self-confidence muscle, which builds your self-esteem, which builds your ability to repeat it again. So we have to get you into acceptance of where you actually are based on our curiosity and based on the level of understanding that we found during the foundational phase. We accept where you are and we create goals from where you actually are. Not where you were 20 years ago, not where you want to be in 20 years, where you are right now. Then the third level is we rebuild and we respect you. So what I like to say in this area is that you actually are doing what you say you're going to do. That deals with you are respecting yourself, you're respecting your word, and you are rebuilding that confidence muscle within yourself. So now we know who you are, we've accepted who you are, and now we are rebuilding and respecting the person that you are. This is where big time women have shared with me, they feel so empowered. Yes, this is the goal. You should feel really empowered as it relates to you. You should feel really, really proud about you. You should feel like you are in integrity with you. This is the goal. You should feel convinced in yourself. You can do this. You should feel convinced with your abilities, with your body, with your knowledge. You have the support. You have the accountability. You can do this. I feel like I could get on a soapbox on this one, but we rebuild that reputation with yourself, and we respect the heck out of you taking care of yourself. And last but not least, we step into excellence. So we don't step into perfection. No one is perfect. We step into the excellence aspect because now you have been consistently showing up for yourself and you've been consistently repeating or practicing doing what you said you're going to do for yourself. And that forms excellence. That also forms empowerment. That just creates something that you're like, dang, I worked hard for this and this is mine. And I always like to say you practice, 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 practice. That's all it is. Same as it would be if you watch sports or if you ever played sports, the only way that you get in the game and the only way that you know the plays that they're going to play is because you practice it. That's what you're creating in your life. You're practicing opportunities for practice. That's it. We want you to practice this on repeat because that's what we call consistency. And when you know what to practice, it feels a lot easier. And you're sharing with yourself different words. You're not saying, "Oh, maybe I'll do this," or "I'll try to do this." You're saying, "I did that. Yeah, I can do that." The words of affirmation that you share with yourself start becoming different. Your overall level of confidence with yourself becomes different, and you feel like back to yourself, really. That's how I've heard so many individuals share, is that I feel like me again. And that is worth everything. So if you have more questions on this, I would love to hear from you. Again, I'm going to put the link in the show notes so you can read that article. You can also connect with me via my newsletter. That is also in the show notes. You can click on the link and be added to the newsletter. I'm exploring a lot more as it relates to the emotions of weight loss. So my newsletter goes out every week. You can certainly tune in. October, the theme is the emotions of weight loss. So the previous episode, I shared a little bit more about the positive aspects. In my newsletter, I'm going to share a little bit more about apathy and also the negative emotions that can be connected with weight loss. So if that's of interest to you, I highly encourage you to get on the newsletter. All right, everyone, I hope this was helpful. Talk to you soon. Thank you so much for taking time out of your day-to-day to tune in. If you love today's content, leave me a review letting me know exactly what you liked best, and remember to share my podcast with others to join the Nourish You community. If you want more great content like this between episodes, I encourage you to join my mailing list. You can click the link below in the show notes or check out my website at www.healthwins.org, and let's stay in touch. Until next time, I'm Jana. Talk soon.